Right now, many Magic players believe after the Commander banning announcement that things will start to settle down, but really what's going to happen is there's now a vacuum in which cards players are going to use and how decks will be constructed. Now, when we're talking about the video today, we are looking at the financial aspect of many of these cards hitting new highs, and it won't just be Mana Vault. Stay tuned, we have a lot to cover in today's video. Now, for all of the players out there who have now kind of closed the book and accepted the fact that these bannings are likely going to hold, at least for the foreseeable future, we also have to look not just at our anger and frustration, but the fact that somebody else out there is trying to fill in the shortcuts of the decks you've just had deconstructed. Because when those cards got banned, you're now going to look for other cards to fill the void. And that's what a lot of these players are going to take the opportunity to do. And it's already happening in the market space. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here. Thank you again for hanging out with me on my channel today. And yeah, we're discussing the bannings, of course, and the effect it's had on the market, but we also have to look at the potential upcoming cards and what players need to know going forward about how some of these price spikes are going to work. So first, let's take a look at the cards that got banned, because we just got to remind ourselves what we just lost. Now, cards like Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt were the biggest surprises because they kind of gave those hints that Dockside Extortionist might be on the block. I still think they should have just reprinted it more often to make it more readily available for players so it wouldn't have to be such a power vacuum for this card. But I know a lot of red players I know say without this card, they can't really compete in certain formats of Commander and certain power levels. Whereas cards like Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, we already have several cards starting to fill that void. And by that void, I'm talking things like Mana Vault, which some people will argue are faster or slower. Of course, we're always going to see Sol Ring there, but also cards like Lotus Petal are being just bought up by the gaggle. They're just being bought up everywhere, and the price is starting to spike on that card, and it's the key card you need to look at. Because it's not just that these cards were the fundamental, breakdown for certain decks for speeding and ramping up. It's not just that. Some of these decks didn't even use those cards. But with those changes, with those cards being pulled out, we've also seen a lot of Commander players actually start selling off other key component cards that are actually quite expensive. There's been a real uptick in a lot of these $80, $90 cards, things like Sheoldred, going on the block right away at your local LGS, being sold online to other players because players are just a little uncertain right now. And with the vacuum left in those speed manas, you would think, oh, there's so much availability, I can just choose X, Y, and Z to get it going. Yes, they'll work fast, but they're not quite the same speed. You still have to draw a certain amount of these cards to make your connections happen, and with those other cards now missing, it's just a little bit less likely, which leaves opportunity on the table. It leaves things open, and I think that's what they're talking about when they say, oh, it's going to be better in the long run for Commander. So there's a couple of scenarios here. Number one, we're going to see new decks created. We're going to see decks that were once not viable start to enter the format and maybe have a chance of actually being played at a competitive level where even at a casual Commander game, you kind of have to worry about what that player's doing. And there's so many different deck designs, and the card depth in Commander is so vast that you can really throw people off with a few fun cards that nobody ever expected. I love to do it from the reserve list with all kinds of nutty old enchantments and stuff, but players aren't going to be just looking there. They'll be looking at any way they can to make a new deck that kind of accelerates on the fact that the fast mana may not be there. So keep that in mind. I don't need to show you a litany of cards you probably already know about, and many of you Commander players are more knowledgeable than me, the Moxman, could ever hope to be. I'm not going to step into a realm of a format that I am not the top-notch dictatorship on. I don't know everything and can tell you everything. But I do know from the decks I've seen played and the amount of damage some of these cards being pulled out will do to slow decks down, that some players are completely rebuilding. They are completely reformulating decks and trying to come up with new strategies and new synergy. And that means we're going to have card sales we didn't expect. That means other players who are the most knowledgeable and who do have a few extra ducats to spend on things, they are the ones who are going to get into this market space and start buying up cards. Now, I didn't realize how popular Lotus Petal was going to be. I didn't understand how popular Mana Vault was going to be, but they're being bought up by the ton. And some people had mentioned Basalt Monolith from back in the day. It's 3, sure, that's a little slow. Okay, it's a great card, fun. I've used it in a couple of Commander decks, But for this format, I think a lot of players are going to find it too slow to really get going, but it's something to keep in mind. Even cards like Grim Monolith have now had an upsurge and maybe on next week's top 10, and Grim Monolith is a reserve list card. So the idea that we're going to see cards kind of fill in for the fast mana, that is an absolute, it's going to happen, but there's also going to be players looking outside the realm of what we know and what could be coming along. And here's the real kicker for everyone, because this is the one I think is bothering a lot of players, and it's in the back of your minds. And for good reason. A lot of people have these conspiracy theories that Wizards of the Coast, the rules committee, they're kind of, working together to make this all happen. Especially after Wizards had just reprinted these cards. And maybe that's true, but the real telling of that will be anywhere in 2025 to 2026 if we see any new type of fast mana come online. That's the 2-year window, right? The 1 year to 2 year window, where these new cards come out of the blue and now fill the void and become super popular and super expensive. Then your conspiracy theories will hold water. They will totally be there. And I can understand it. I may even back it at that point. Because we don't know what Wizards has planned or what they'll do to institute some kind of new way of getting mana and getting cards on the battlefield. To getting things sped up again. And then the rules committee would have to deal with it again, right? If they're actually a separate entity. Which everyone assures me they are. And then some of you say they're not. So I'm just going to sit there hanging on the edge of the fence going, I wonder what's going to happen. I'm just sitting there perched. Because for many of these cards, and the way I like to play Commander, I don't really care if I win or lose. I go for the experience. I do the best I can. But there is that bit of a win side we all have. Where that competitive thing kind of comes out in us and we want to do well. And we build the best we can. And I know people say, well, those cards had to get taken out because they were so expensive. And not every player could have those cards. Well, Wizards, whether that was going to happen or not, Wizards engineered the cards. They got created. And yes, they could have been printed more often. Like, I still think Dockside Extortionist should have been around more. I don't think he's as big of a threat as people thought. Yes, he could be a problem, but people should know to deal with that when they have their Commander decks built, that these kind of cards, the most likely suspects, you got to have a way of dealing with that stuff, right? So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, because I understand these things can be over turn 1, turn 2. We know how insane things can be in Commander, but generally speaking at a casual table, I haven't come across that. Now, in this last part here, I want to remind you guys, when you're looking for the price check on these cards, Mana Vault, Lotus Petal, which is going to show a different price change, probably Monday or Tuesday if you look on MTG stocks. The sales are too high, and they really started late on Friday night, which means they didn't make my top 10 video this week, and they're now going to show up probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. When those sales really start racking in, if we see a reprint of that card, it's going to bother me. Just, if we see a reprint right away, it means what's going on, how they know to reprint that card. It's just one of those things in the back of my head, but it is a way of speeding up mana, okay? And when I also look forward and say what could happen next, I realize that cards like Mana Vault, right? Other fast mana sources that weren't as readily reprinted may start coming around again as other players and Wizards recognizes, hey, there's a secondary market value card here really spiking up. I think we'll put that in. Now, here we are at the end. Here's the crutch for you. As much fun as it is, and as horrible as this banning was, and I still have tremendous empathy for everyone who lost value, because like any stock market, prices can crash, but unless it's unbanned, these cards can't recover. They can't climb back up the ranks because their format space is so limited. And we know a lot of players have actually told me, I'm not following the rules committee anymore. I'm just going to play with my pod and not care. That's great. But for a majority of players who didn't know these bannings were even going to, may not even be aware now that they've taken place until they show up at a local game night. Not everyone is like in touch with everything. For all those players who lost the value, I just feel horrible. Okay, But at this point, the sales have happened. If you've got these cards, I would hold on right now. I would still hold on because we all know unbannings come later on. Look at Jace the Mind Sculptor and other famous cards that got unbanned. We also know there's tremendous pressure now to create CDH its own format, which means if those cards become unbanned and become part of CDEH, competitive Commander, you might see more players leave the regular Commander and join CDEH because they can use their cards there. And they didn't lose as much value, which means there could be recovery in the long term if we have a bigger fracturing of the Commander community. Okay, it already has happened in my play group. We've had some groups already split up, one side of the fence or the other, so time will tell. I can't wait to see your comments in the comments section about how you find the situation unraveling in your area and how things are playing out. I would like to know, and put that down here in the comment section so everyone can kind of read and digest what's going on. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to, of course, watch the video this far and, of course, comment in my videos. Give them a thumbs up. So thanks again for hanging out with me today. Keep an eye on those card prices, guys. I will report things as soon as I see them and, of course, let you guys know what's going on in the market space. Thanks again for tuning in. A reminder, if you enjoyed today's content, like and subscribe to the channel. We're only around 500 subscribers away from hitting 25,000 subscribers. So thanks again, everyone, for making it happen. I will see you guys tomorrow for another video. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe out there. Hey guys, a big shout out and thank you to the fantastic patrons of my channel. Because of those amazing patrons, daily uploaded content gets created on YouTube every single day. And without those patrons, well, it just wouldn't be happening. So thanks again for being members of my channel, my Patreon. Guys, it's awesome to have that support each and every day. I don't forget it, and I hope you never will too. We look forward to another video tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. All right, guys, welcome back to the end of the video. This is the ramble and the jamble. And my microphone was off a little bit. The little lid thing was off. Couple things to cover here. A lot of the mana rocks, everything from Mind Stone to Fellwar Stone, a whole bunch of the talisman ones, you know, the ones that reduce casting costs. A lot of these cards are being bought up right now, so it's something to keep an eye on. I'm putting it here at the end of the video for the Ramble Jamble fans, the Ramble and the Jamble, just to let you guys be aware. There's a ton of supply, don't worry. None of these cards are going to be spiking to like 50 bucks. But it is the fill-in cards right now. I have players, friends who've already filled in a lot of these cards who are still playing at regular commander nights, and they've had to come up with something quickly, so they've opted for other mana rock sources to get their things going. And I have other friends who refuse to play their decks right now. They're tearing them apart and fully reconstructing, and I got several emails about that, so we'll have to see how that all plays out. So other than that, I can say, yep, it looks like there's a lot of unhappiness in the commander community, a lot of unhappiness with the value of cards going down, and people will say, hey, it's not an investment. Well, I agree. Some people to a degree can say that, and I can see the argument for that point, but the problem with it is Wizards markets it as a high-priced item, and they should be backing up their word with the value of the card. Okay? There should be formats you can play it in more than just Vintage or Legacy. They've got to make it so there's got to be some kind of format that either gets bigger, which means Vintage Legacy gets some kind of new ramp up, which includes every card plus reserve list cards, of course. Or they see a new type of reserve list being built where those cards go to those formats instead. There's got to be some kind of solution where these cards don't lose like 50 to 90% of their value. Because the only reason we're even having the values stay where they are right now is the holdout players who are not selling their cards. They're sitting on them, and they're refusing to. Because the sales this week were insane. There's a lot more sales that went on afterwards, and that's from a lot of stores I didn't get info from right away. Like it came later. It's too late to put it in the Saturday edition. So, guys, thanks again for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to seeing what happens this week. If anything, it's an exciting world in the world of Magic, and I still think the victim is going to be MTG Foundations. I think it's just going to get slaughtered. Anyway, have a great one. I got coffee here. I'm going to drink.